Hi there. Welcome to Tea with the Druid, or sorry, hijacking Philip's thing. Sorry, Philip. Welcome to another Fireside Chat with Eimear, and this is our 17th one. So just type in your name and let me know where you're from. Hi, from Skegness. Hi, Mervyn. Hi, Gabriella. So just let me know that you're here before I introduce you to this week's mystery guest. Hi, Linda from Maryland, Wyvern from Oz, wonderful. Luna from Yorkshire, great. Hi, Catherine. Elvira from Italy, ciao. That's Valentina. Hi, Carolee from Maryland, wonderful. Oh, somebody from Hawaii, brilliant. Belgium, hi, Ava. Linda Joan from Australia. I'm always impressed with the down under people who can get up early to watch these. Yvonne, Stephanie from Utah, Kim, Oklahoma, wonderful. Benoit from Bordeaux, Sasha from Mexico, wonderful, wonderful. Hi, Pete from Chester, somebody a bit more local. That's wonderful. Great. Lovely to see you all. Hi, Shelby from New York and Norway, Siobhan. That's a good Irish name. And Denise from Philadelphia, Scotland. Hi, Liz from Glastonbury, beautiful. Hi, Pauline, very, very welcome. So I'd like to introduce you to, we're going to Brittany tonight and introduce you to OBOD member Dany Seignabou. You're very, very welcome, Dany.
Merci. Hello, everybody. Hello, Emma.
Hi. I just remember the first time meeting you was in Brocéliande.
Yes.
2019, and you're not from Brittany, so just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm French. I grew up in the south of France, in Toulon, in Nice, in Antibes, Juan-les-Pins, Cannes. Then I moved to the States for 7.5 years. Then I moved to the Netherlands for 29 years. And 5 years ago, I finally decided that it was time to come back to France. I fell in love with Brittany and I came here. So I've been here now 5 years. And I love it.
So what is it about Brittany?
I heard about it when I was growing up from my brother who had been sailing, who loved Bretagne and told me that you either love it or you hate it. Most people from the south think that Bretagne, that it always rains here and that it's cold. And so in 2007, I started to be interested in Druidism, and I decided to come and investigate Brittany. So we came with my partner in a car and we went from B&B and B&B and we went through a lot of places in Bretagne and I totally fell for it. So I went back to the Netherlands and decided that because I had benefited from a little bit of an inheritance from my grandmother, that I would be looking for a house here where the housing is very cheap if you live a bit away from the cities. And I would come to Brittany and discover Brittany.
Well, I've only been there once, and I thought it was the countryside was magical because it's interesting, say the people from the south of France think it just rains all the time and it's dull. That sounds like Ireland to me, and it really struck me how similar the landscape was to Ireland. I was able to recognize the trees and the plants and the herbs. What was different and what I found fascinating was the food, the wonderful crêpes and the galette, and of course the chachin and the cider and drinking cider out of the boulet, the teacups.
Yeah, the boulet, yeah.
The architecture and the wonderful villages, and of course the language. So it was like a familiar landscape, and then you step out of the landscape into the culture, and it's very, very different. And I thought that was magical.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I think it is magical, and it's nice when somebody else can feel that too. I'm sold on it.
And of course, you know, things with the Gwerse and everything else. We hear about Arthur and Merlin, and yet Merlin and Arthur are also in the landscape in it was particularly in Brocéliande. So would you just tell our audience a little bit about that?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm the best to be able to talk about this, but there is a bard here, a famous harpist called Myrdhin. And Myrdhin is a friend of Philippe Cargom and was also knew Nouin. So he has a long connection with the OBOD. And he can tell the story of Bretagne very well. And you met him when you were at Brocéliande. When I first came to Brocéliande, I was a little bit wondering about how could we share Arthur, both in Bretagne and in Great Britain. How was it possible? How can we share the same mythology? Who is right? Who is... And then I realized after a while that it doesn't matter at all. There is no right or wrong. There is no fighting. It's just beautiful that we can enjoy the same legend with a bit of local addition. It's like addition. We have added our own sauce to it, and I think it's great. I take it as this. It's rich that way.
I thought it was just a wonderful going to Merlin's pool in the forest in Brocéliande, the one that isn't this the one where you can divine, you go there, perform a ritual at the full moon, and you ask a question, and depending on the bubbles that come up will give you your answer. Am I right?
Yes, you could see it that way. Yes, it's
putting it very
Le Fontaine de Barenton, we were there.
Yes.
Ritual. Yeah, it's a really special place. But then the whole forest is, and in fact the whole area is. But for me, the whole of Bretagne is, of at least what I have seen, and specifically my place, of course.
Yeah, we went to Gavranis on the Morbihan. I thought that was wonderful. And going into those cairns, and the one in Gavranis is absolutely wonderful with these magnificent carvings. I know Philip suggests in his novel that it was more impressive than Newgrange. There was a bit of muttering. That's what some people didn't agree with them. I don't know why, but the carvings were spectacular because the walls, it's almost like panels of these huge stones, intricately carved. It was absolutely incredible. So it was quite magical.
Yes, but I've been to Newgrange.
Yes.
And I was impressed. So, yes. In fact, while I can say it now, because I might not have a chance to say it afterwards, when I went to Newgrange, I was with a group of mostly Dutch Druids. We had a really quick trip to Ireland, and we went to Tara, and we went to Newgrange, and we were walking, and we had to cross the river Boyd. You see Boyd?
Boyne.
And I think that's the first time I was really impressed, touched by the strength of the water, the spirit of the water there was so forceful, was so wild and so powerful that it really took my breath away. And that's what I remember the most from the whole trip to Ireland, was that river and its power, and in a very feminine, wild force, real strong spirit of, love it. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because the goddess associated with the River Boyne is Boann, and she gives her name to the river. And it's really interesting when we think of the Well of Shagash or Cunla's Well, the source of all wisdom, with 9 hazel trees surrounding it, and the 5 streams representing the 5 senses, and the salmon coming up to receive the kernels of wisdom. In the story of Finn McCool, where he gets the Imas, it's like Boann it's that day she sends the salmon up. The salmon gets the the kernel of the hazelnut and goes down the River Boyne. And then Finnegas, the druid, catches the fish and gives it to the young boy to cook. And then Demna bursts the blister on the salmon and puts his thumb in his mouth, and he gets the knowledge. A bit similar to the Gwyn backstory in Taliesin, but it's Boan, the goddess, and it's interesting that you felt that power in River Boyne. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So, what brought you to Druidry?
I had how do I say? I think maybe I have to start with how I got into spirituality.
Great, lovely.
Because I was never. I'm a very late bloomer for everything, and I came very late. I came very late to spirituality, and it started with doing yoga because there had been a burglary in my house, and I needed to kind of recenter afterwards. And I thought, I'm going to try yoga. There was yoga in the neighborhood. I went, I tried that. Then my teacher had been doing a course on Reiki and wanted to become a Reiki teacher. She had an information avant, so information evening. So I went there to please her. I listened to her. She wasn't very good at explaining, and I normally need to understand. But she was good at giving. So she asked for a volunteer. There were none. I went there. I lay down. I felt the energy, and that was it. I had felt something. I needed to investigate. I did, and from the moment where I started to realize that I could feel energy, I realized that there was more to life than what I had been feeling up to then. And from then on, I decided that after a while that I became a Reiki master after a few years. And then I thought that was more of a technique for me than a philosophy. And I wanted to know more. So I went to look into shamanism. I met a German lady in the Netherlands who didn't speak Dutch fluently. I didn't speak Dutch fluently, but we both spoke English. So I became a student or an apprentice. And so it was funny, German and French speaking English in the Netherlands, but I did shamanism with her. And I thought to her, this is the deal, I'll do a weekend with you if I can get into a trance journey, if I can see something or feel something, I will carry on. If I can't, I stop. So I went into shamanism. I loved it. I really, really loved it. And at the end, I thought we had a weekend on death, and I wasn't sure if it was. We were also going to look at the future or the past. And I had a trance journey, and I find myself in a forest, in a groove. I didn't know what's called a groove. And there was this white figure there, and I didn't know what it was. And it made me think of Assurance Tourix, so Druid of Obelix and Asterix.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Asterix, yes.
This guy, this Druid.
Get it. His name.
Yes, for us it's Assurance Tourix. So it kind of made me think of that, but I thought, what is this? And there were I was working with some animal powers animals, and they were there next to that figure. So when it was finished, I thought I need to investigate this because I don't know what it is, but it's somehow connected to me. And I don't know if it's in the past or the future, but I have to investigate. And I had no idea what this was, and I discovered that it was probably Druidism. And I started looking into that direction. And that's partly why I came to Bretagne, to investigate who that felt. And if you want me to develop the story,
let's go on.
I was very cautious because I like shamanism so much that I didn't want to change, but I thought that shamanism, the way I had been studying, did not belong to me. I wanted to put some West European roots to my shamanism. And So I checked on the net and I found a website called Bretagne Celtic, and there was a lady there. I got in touch with her because she had an article about the Druid. In fact, it turned out to be a French Druid. Her name is Diane. She's best known among the French OBOD. And she advised me to go look into the OBOD.
Oh, okay.
So there was that French lady. Then I went to Bretagne and I went into Pampon and I went into a shop because they were selling stones and I love crystals and stone. And I saw a man there, the shopkeeper, and I started to talk to him and I realized he's not French and he was Dutch. So we spoke in Dutch. And he had a book from Philip. So I thought, the book from Philip Cargam. So he said, yes, I am from the OBOD. And I thought, that's the second time that I hear OBOD. And I had already investigated it, so I knew Philip Cargam was the chief. And then I came home and I thought, wow, that's already two different people. And in the shamanism group, there was a big forum online, and there was somebody had learned called Barry Patterson, which I'm probably not saying his name right, but
you are.
Barry, I had talked to him about shamanism, so I got in touch with him to ask him if he knew anything about the OBOD since he's British. And he told me, yes, I am an honorary bard and you should look into it. And then I thought, okay, 3 people, 3 different nationalities giving me the same thing. So I got into it. I got the first packets and there was no turning back.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is Druidry something you are or something you do?
I am.
You. That's the long answer.
I am. I mean, you know, there is always a big debate. We've all had it about whether we can call ourselves a druid or not. At which stage can we call ourselves a druid? And is it a druid or a druidess or what? But I went to the 50th anniversary in Glastonbury, and it was just fabulous. And Kathleen Matthews made a real speech about what is it to call yourself a druid, and you should do it with pride. And I think that when we are, if we're talking to other druids, we don't need to say we're druid. And if I'm talking to, and I don't go around telling people in my life that I'm a druid, but I don't shy away from it either. But the question is not that I want to call myself a druid, but more that I feel that I am a druid.
Because I remember Kathleen in that talk of the 50th, and she ended her I think it was the last phrase in her talk. And so she said, if somebody asks you, so you call yourself a druid, do you? Your answer is, I don't call myself a druid. I am a druid.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
That was such a powerful statement.
Yes.
It's about what you are and not the label you wear.
Yes.
And it's the beingness of it. And that very much is internal. It's about coming from within, so you don't have to defend it, nor do you have to show it off, because it doesn't matter.
No, and you don't have to explain it either or justify it, I feel. I'd like to pass the information if people are interested what they might expect from Druidism if they don't know anything about it. But I don't have the feelings that I should justify myself if I was under attack or so.
Yes.
I don't. I feel a bit like so much what I am, that's it. So if you don't like that, then you don't like me. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's something like it's not something you have to prove, because it's not something you earn. It's not like a degree. It's not like a promotion. It's something that you are, and you be it.
Yeah, and I must say I discovered it. Also, I think it's some things that I grew into. I don't think that I was necessarily that from birth, because I'm a late bloomer. There was a lot of things that I had to make mine as I went along. So I think the experience, because they are so personal when we are working on the course, and our own experience afterwards in nature or whatever it is really makes it in the end yours, even if you were not that at a certain moment in your life. You become this, and once it's there, it's there. At least for me, it was a process.
I think so, and I would say that was for me as well. And I think it's about taking ownership of it, as in that this is what you are within, and living it. Do you have a daily practice, for example?
Yes, I every morning I go into my room because I am lucky enough to have a special room. I call it my meditation room, but it's not really a meditation room, but it is a place where I have all my spiritual stuff, and it's made for ritual if I want to have one. So I salute. I don't open the directions, but I go to each corner of the room where I have special statues, and I have my little talk, always the same in French.
Okay.
To the corners, and I salute my fellow druid, shamans, witches, priestess, magician. It's kind of a all-inclusive practice every morning. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Do you have a special place near where you live that you go to in nature?
Yes, my own place. I have. I'm lucky to have a lot of ground, and this ground is lost in the boonies anyway. We're really in the boonies. It's marvelous here. We have a swamp.
Yeah.
We have tons of trees. I have like a field which allows some peace and rest for the eyes, and then there is a little wood, and they are massive trees, oaks and chestnut trees, and I'm thinking in Nuin, which is S, I believe, S, and ash.
Yeah.
S is in Dutch, and yeah, it's willows. I don't have to go. I just have to step out of my house, and I'm in the middle of nature, and that is some things that I'm really, really grateful for. In fact, it's partly why I choose that house, or that house chose me. I really believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's just out there, and I feel very, very blessed to be able to have it just outside, and I can be inside and look out at it, or just step outside the door. When would you say in your own life that Druidry has supported you?
I think in the big decisions. I had some important decision to make, some life-changing decision, I would say, and that's where Druidism supported me the most. And also, I had a health problem at one point. On the 21st of December, on solstice night, and that really was important because it was a scare. It was scary and it was a scare, but nothing could be found that justifies that problem. So I had to do some inside work to think about, could I find myself a reason for this? And I'm convinced that it was kind of a sign of life, of my guides, telling me that I was not paying attention to what was going on. I was very much involved into the OBOD course because I didn't like the place I was in, and I wanted to come to Bretagne, and it wasn't happening. And so I buried myself in this study and pretended that the rest wasn't there. And of course, that's not the way to do. So this was a call to order. And afterwards, because that has happened, I was a little bit shaken. And I had to fight the fear that it might happen again. And then Druidry really supported me in this.
In what way did it? I don't know if you're comfortable just elaborating on that. What was it? Was there a particular teaching, a particular practice, or what was it?
Going to nature. It was going into nature every day, going away, walking in nature with my dog. It was a bit of a challenge. This was a special dog to me, but she's gone now. But she was a German Shepherd. She didn't like other dogs at all. So going to walk with her was a challenge, because if we were going to meet another dog, this was going to be heavy. But I went with her walking in nature, the same places. I greeted the same trees, the same, and I got peace from that, and strength, and feeding, and courage. Most of all, courage, and that did it.
You just said something there, is that it was the same trees. So was there something around going to a place that you knew, a familiar place that you had a relationship with, that continued to grow in some way, that you were grounded in your own land, as it were, in your...
Yeah, except that it wasn't my land. And this is some things that I would like to say for maybe also foreigners who live not in their place, is that because I lived in the Netherlands for so long, it is my second country, let's say, to me. My family is still there, but I firmly believe that we can find contact with any land, anywhere we are. We can make contact with trees anywhere we are, or with the elements whenever we are. We don't have to be in our own land for that. And this is what I find is so beautiful with nature. Mm-hmm. To me, it's welcoming, and I will find the connection if I open myself to it, if I'm receptive, if I'm open, and if I am respectful of the land where I am. I don't think it's a misappropriation of the land to try to connect with it. I think it comes naturally. And in a way, when I am in France now, I can connect with the land in the Netherlands very easily. And when I visit the Netherlands, like I did at Christmas, I can connect with my piece of land here just as easily. And I think it's like that everywhere. It's beautiful that we can carry Druidism with us, and the contact that we have with nature, or the connection that we have with nature, the elements, whatever, is with us.
Absolutely. And as humans, we are migratory beings. I mean, I don't know if this, this out of Africa theory that we all came out of Africa, I think that's been disputed by some people. I'm not going into the argument, but the notion is that our ancestors moved, and that there's been migration of humans all over the world. And when people move to a new land, they then connected with that place and with the spirit of that place. And then in time became the ancestors of that place. So that somebody says, yes, Maka Smith, the spirit of place. It doesn't matter what nationality you are. And I think that's so, so true. Because when you connect with the spirit of the place, that's done in a way of respect. And like you say, it's not about appropriating the land. I'm not from Kilkenny. I belong here. It doesn't belong to me. I suppose I'm a steward of the land, of the house and the garden that I own. But that, I'm not going to be taking it away with me when I'm leaving. But that finding that place where you belong, and to be able to, and this is the wonderful things I think about Druidry, if you can allow yourself and be open yourself, is that it allows you that ability to connect with the earth beneath your feet and the landscape around you.
Yes.
And in a sense, it's like an imperative as Druids to be able to connect with our landscape. This is what it's about.
Yeah, and it goes from itself. I want to say, we don't. It's like when you visit a new place. When I visit a new place in Brittany, or even in the Netherlands, I visited new places. Even that I lived there for 29 years, there were places I didn't know, because my son and his wife love to walk, and they took me on these long walks, and I hadn't done them yet. It's incredible because everywhere is, you feel the connection instantly, nearly, if you want to, and if you're open to it. And yeah, it's a gift.
This is from Owen de Vardoon. He was a guest some weeks back, maybe it's months, I can't remember at this stage. This is such a beautiful discussion. Where you are might just be where you belong. If you listen, it'll let you know. And I think that is so important, is around stopping and listening. We have an expression in Irish. It's the, I suppose, our equivalent to shut up, but what it means, eish the veil, which means listen your mouth. Just to the mouth, just listen, let your mouth listen, which means shut up and pay attention. And I think when you stop and listen to the landscape, I think you get an answer. And I think that's here from Pat Booker. What does she say? Yeah, humans connect with the land just the same way we breathe the air. To attempt to withhold that connection is unnatural and cruel. The land reaches out to us. And I think that's so true. And I see Casey Stevenson, who was a guest recently. Yes, the imperative to connect to the land. I like that word to describe it. And when Pat, I don't know if you saw the interview with her, when she, it was very moving when she says, I think it was the night her dad died, she went out and put her hands in that land because that's what was going to sustain her and ground her in her grief. And I think we have a gift around us if only we can allow ourselves to connect. Now, I'm lucky I find it easy. It's not, for some, they find it hard. And I think we have to connect, no matter where we are. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, I last year, I've been alone for 1 year. And I've felt sometime lonely, not that often, but that has happened. And then I go to the land, especially the little woods.
Yeah.
And I disconnect when I get in there, or let's say I disconnect my thoughts and I start connecting to what's around. And it's incredible because when I succeed, which is mostly, I don't feel alone anymore. I feel peaceful. I even feel enthusiastic because I will find a new, forgive me for this, but I will find a new little amount of poop somewhere, and I will start to investigate what it is, which animal it is, or a new, and yes, and I realize every day it's different. Every day something has changed. It's amazing. There is really life out there. So it's not possible to feel alone then, because you're part of it.
And it's just interesting when you're talking about finding the bits of poop and to discover, curious as to, well, which animal does this belong to?
Yeah.
Penny Billington, she talks about the wonders. And sometimes on Facebook, she'll say, well, can anyone see, what wonder have you seen? And you're describing that, the wonder of, poop, or the wonder of that particular butterfly or that insect or that bird call or whatever it is, or, oh, I hadn't noticed that tree is now in bud this week. I remember at the beginning of when we went into the first lockdown, for the first time in 15 years, I was able to walk on the road outside my house because there was no traffic. And I was able to do an audit each week of what was coming up in the landscape. And I was like, oh, there's that growing, there's growing. I hadn't seen it before because I was always driving because I couldn't walk. It wasn't safe enough. And to be able to slow down and spot all the magic. And I took a photograph, and I remember putting it up on my Instagram, of an ash tree in bloom.
Yeah, I saw it.
It was beautiful pink flowers. Beautiful pink flowers. Yeah. And I have a huge ash tree, but it's really, 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 really high. So they look brown from the distance. But this was fascinating to see pink flowers because they were at my eye level. That's a wonder. And that's so healing. And yet it's so simple and it's free.
Yes, it's free. It's free, and it's constantly renewing itself.
That's exactly it. So I think a lot of people are enjoying our poop talk, but the wonder of poop. But well, actually, you discover so much from it, and so many trees propagate through animal droppings, etc. So it's really
Well, I mean, I have a story on this. It bothered me for days because I was finding holes in the little wood, and they were fairly deep. So I had assumed that it would be a big animal, and there was always poop in it. And I was taking picture of it, and I was going back on Google trying to figure out what it could be, and then and finally I think that it would be a badger.
okay.
Because they call them pot à crotte in French, which means poop hole, basically.
Oh,
And
okay.
apparently go away from their territory at a certain distance, and then they go do this in it. So I think it was great. But I mean, I will study everything and try to decide if it's a ferret or a fox or what it is, and because they normally live of a lot of animal lives that on the path. I have some paths in that little wood, and then it's like a presence. It's either prince or poop, and I study that to know
it's having that curiosity and sense of wonder about where you're walking. I mean, that beats TV anytime, doesn't it?
Yes.
Most exciting one for me recently was porcupine poop. Never seen it before, and they clearly frequent my grove, which is amazing. Okay, wonderful. The wombat poop. I mean, there's going to be loads here that's putting up in if you can find joy in poop, you're on the right path. Well done, Michael. Great.
So I'm going to be known as the one druid that talked about poop, right, on Eimear Fireside Chat.
No. In addition to exploring poop and its curiosities, how do you honor your ancestors or the ancestors? I mean, I mean that in a general, not necessarily your blood ancestors.
Well, I think it's the appreciation of the land, really. The appreciation of the land. It mostly has to pass by land for me. Also in the house, I must say, I'm big on decoration to create an atmosphere, and I have a very old house, and I wanted to maintain it this way. So I create there were already some little niche. I don't know if you call them niche in English. Some little holes.
Yeah, niche. Yeah.
And so I have little altars here and there. I put a lot of signs for people who are druid could recognize in the house. I have a lot of stones and a lot of wood and a lot of little and feathers and little oaks, not oaks but little acorn. Is that nice?
Yeah. Acorn, yeah.
Acorn is Dutch, isn't
it? Acorn?
Oh, yes, from the oak.
Yeah, in English it's called acorn as well.
Okay. Acorn, yes. So I all over the place, all over the house. So when you mean the ancestors, I think that I have to add that I'm also honor the spirit of the house and the land. To me, that's ancestors and spirits are tightly joined.
Yeah, I meant it in the broadest sense. So sometimes people feel, well, I'm adopted, or I don't know who I don't know who my ancestors are. And I've said this before, so if people are hearing me, she says this again. I remember Howard, my husband, who lived in Scotland and was half Scottish, and he said there's a Scottish phrase: the bonds of milk are stronger than the bonds of blood. So your milk line, I think, is a very, very important one. And in both the Irish tradition, the Scottish tradition, and I suppose maybe Celtic more broadly, that notion of fosterage, so that people would give their children to another family to be fostered, where they were taken care of. And that was either for security or to help create bonds between one tribe and another. one clan and another. And so the foster parents were obliged to look after this foster child because their child was probably with another family. So they were milk bonds, not blood bonds, and that people kept those very, very strong. So it's around the sense of ancestors rather than just your own. And I like that notion of, you connecting with the spirits of your house and the spirits of your garden. And
the blood ancestors I connect mostly by my personal way of connecting is through butterflies. So I have a butterfly for some of my dearest ancestors, and also with object in the house, specific object that reminds me of one of my blood ancestor.
Okay.
And in a way, I feel very gratified because I found out when I came to Brittany, my brother wrote a book about the family tree. And I found out that my grandmother on my father's side, who I've never really had much information about because she died when my father was very young, that she was actually born in Morlaix, which is a place in Bretagne. So I've actually have a blood ancestor who's born in Bretagne. So, I can claim a little bit of Breton blood, although she was not really from Breton parents, but she was born here, so that
okay.
got to account for something, I think.
Somebody else, Marcus Smith says, I think she's talking about ancestors as well. It's people who taught us something. And I think that is something really, really important because, as ancestors ourselves or future ancestors, I think it's nice to think that we've left some teaching behind us, or that, when you teach someone something, whatever it is, that's a legacy that you're leaving. And you're still here, but you're passing it on. And I think that is a great gift that we can, to be able to pass on our learnings to other people in however way we do it.
Yeah, I think the way to do it can be different for everyone. It's sometimes difficult to find the right way. Specifically to me, when I talk to my sons, I have 2 sons and 2 daughter-in-laws, because children are not really receptive to listening to parents.
No.
So you have to do it in a non-invasive way, or in a tricky way, maybe, to make sure that you can put a little bit. I like the idea that Philip used about the seed sort, the idea of putting a little seed here somewhere.
That's right.
If it's going to develop, and maybe they haven't noticed that I drop a few seeds, but I did,
Somebody says, are the people yet to come considered ancestors? I think in the future we'll get there. But when you're talking about seeds, some seeds germinate really quickly, and others need to be in the ground a long time. I lived in the Turkana Desert in Kenya in the early 80s, and it rained about 2 or 3 times in the year, and that would be just for one day. So nothing grew. You're talking about, it's a desert, okay? It's not a sandy desert. It's rough, kind of gravelly. Wasn't a sandy desert, shall we say? And overnight, the seeds would germinate.
Huh.
You'd have a carpet of green leaves, and then yellow flowers or white flowers or whatever it is. Overnight, the whole thing, this carpet would appear.
Wow.
But they were waiting. Waiting for the right conditions. And I think when we plant seeds, it comes in its own time. Who's it? Parents, I think someone says here. No, that's the wrong one. Sorry, Juliet. Parents are also not receptive to listen to the children. It goes both ways. I think so. I like to think I listen to my children, but I'm sorry, I'm fiddling around with my clicker here. It's I like to think I listen, but sometimes I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't comment on this because in
case your children are listening.
and I know what they would say, so I'm not going to comment on that.
I've had that. You never listen. Yes. So somebody was asking that, our JG put this, we are tomorrow's ancestors, the future of yesterday, and for what we are in the here and now goes rippling out all ways. So as an ancestor of tomorrow, you may have already answered this, but no harm to repeat it if you have, is how can you be an ancestor of tomorrow right now? Because actually we are preparing. Right now we're preparing the way of the future in many ways.
I'm not quite sure how to answer this. I think that I can only reach a limited amount of people, mostly the people I'm close to or my friends. And then this is what I will do, is to try to pass on my ideas or my love for the land or the animals or Druidism or spirituality or whatever. The idea of seed sorts, trying to communicate, I think, talk about it, show it sometime. But I am amazed already to see how the children, my children and the younger generation are already much more concerned than I was at their age by the environment, by all the crises that we have around us. In a way, they are much more, they sort out their garbage very naturally. They're already very conscious, and I think that they might have some stuff to teach me still.
Absolutely. Here's something from Lynn Joan, and I think this is an interesting one. I believe we were our ancestors in a past life. So honor the ancestors is really honoring parts of ourselves. And I think there's a lot in that. What would you think?
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's just like coming to spirituality fairly late in life. It's like it was there waiting to be brought up. And the older I get, and I do get older, the more I discover that there was a lot of stuff in me, and I can't justify. For example, I grew up in a city, a busy city next to the sea, really in the south of France, and I love the forest. I love nature. I love peace. I don't know where it's coming from. Somehow it's not coming, doesn't seem to be really connected to this life. I'm not necessarily saying it's coming from another life, but I do believe that it was in me and it's coming up. And I don't really have an explanation, but I'm also not really looking for one. I think it's part of the mystery of life. It's great. I just wish it had come earlier. But okay, I'll make the best of it now, and maybe next time I'll be faster.
Somebody says here, this is an interesting one. The concept of ancestry within Druidry has helped me feel better about perhaps never having descendants. And that is an interesting one. And I'd love to know how, because not everybody will have descendants. Well, we won't have descendants by blood, but we'll certainly have, if we honor our ancestor, maybe this is what this person Blair is talking about, that when I talk about ancestors, I'm not talking about blood ancestors, I'm talking about ancestors in a very broad way, so that we also have descendants in a very broad way, that we're not talking about our own biological descendants, but we're actually talking about future generations.
Yeah, and I believe we can be of influence, or at least we can pass on some of our stuff to people who are close to us. To me, the idea of descendants is, of course, in principle connected to blood, but it doesn't have to be. Like, to me, descendants are all the young people who are coming after me are a bit descendant in a way. So I think if people haven't had descendants, they don't have to. They won't be forgiven. They won't be forgotten.
Yeah.
They will, they will pass on what they have to pass. to somebody else who will pass it on to somebody else.
Jules Weaver says, walking the paths of the old ones and reaching out for their wisdom, I hope to be an example for the next generation. Perhaps this will guide them through the trials they may face. And I think there's a lot in that, and Blair confirms that's what I was saying, that the notion of being an example. So it doesn't have to be about, are you going to leave 20 books behind and so many symphonies or whatever great works of art. But it's that being an example or being a role model for somebody. And you only need it to be for one person, for them to learn and to pass it on. So now there's one from Jane. This is an intro. I had no direct blood children, but there are many folks I have helped, healed, encouraged that will always remember me in some way. Plus, can be ancestors of the land and be known by the land for the work we did together. I think that's lovely, Jane. Thank you for saying that. And then somebody else says, this is an answer to Blair. Blair, it's not that you will not have descendants, perhaps children you mean, but think of it this way. Every life and soul that you touch in this life will be your descendant for years to come. Your influences upon those lives and souls will live on. I think that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for these really wonderful responses. Michael, we cultivate seeds in the minds and hearts of our descendants that continues to grow long after we physically depart. Each of our ancestors gave a little of themselves for us. Just as a star has to die to shed its atoms, our ancestors live within us. Thank you so much for that. That's really, really lovely.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's heartening. I just love this, to see the level of engagement, with our audience around this. And obviously, it's a very important topic. And Gabriella, we will all become ancestors for those. I think that's absolutely beautiful. So I can't be reading all of these because I'll end up doing that. This is one descendants are, in a broad way, are also who we harm with our lifestyles and mistakes. It's wonderful and also scary to have descendants in any sense. Actually, you're right there. It gives, we have that sense of responsibility as ancestors that we're not leaving a legacy of harm or with our lifestyle and our mistakes. And that's a hard one that we need to look at.
And also, I think during the ovate, without revealing too much, but during the ovate grade, there is work to be done with the descendants. And I was a bit, I was a little bit wary of doing this because I have a bad, let's say, I didn't have the best relationship with my mother. And I was afraid that this work might steer things a bit for me. And in fact, it worked out totally different, and it was an absolutely beautiful experience that I had. And I think that in all families there are always a few problems, and we're not always capable to solve them. But it's important to me to know. It's important to know that we can always do it afterwards. That there is always a time or a way to do it anyway, and that maybe one time we will learn, like I learned after my mother's death, to try to understand what the source of the problem might have been between us, and in a way moved on from that and get peace about it.
I think that's important because, yeah, I mean, we can do, what's that biblical thing? The sins of the father are reaped upon the son, or whatever it is, that it goes down through generations. And I think that does happen. We have family patterns, ancestral patterns. So if there's been hurt at some point, with generations past, that we can bring about healing. Now, Gabriella says, maybe we don't need to understand, maybe we just need to love, and that heals it. I think you have a very important point there. Sometimes understanding can help, but sometimes we may not know what the root cause of it is. But coming at it from a place of love may surpass the need to understand and bring about healing. And I think we can break family patterns, and we can heal the past from at this time.
Yeah, for me, I might disagree a tiny bit on this, because I'm someone that really need to understand as much as I can. That's my way of, and the way it helped me with my mother was to, if I may share that, was to not look at it anymore from the relationship that we had as daughter or mother, but to try to learn about her life and try to see her as a person and as a woman, and not as my mother. And all of a sudden it became a bit more clearer why she had been the person that she was, what she had appeared to be, at least. Once I could see her, and then I was not so involved emotionally when I look at her simply as a person on her own. It helped a lot. I think we get sometimes very involved emotionally with our family members and our ancestors, and that blur our vision a bit. Everybody is different. We don't know all the stories.
That's true. I mean, I've had a similar thing to you. You know, understanding. So if I can stand in the shoes of this person, now I know where they're coming from. Now I know what the blocks were, or how they couldn't be the person I wanted them to be. Now I understand. And then you're able to release and let go. So I think I feel grateful that I got that understanding. And I think obviously from what you're saying, you did too. And then for the ones that we don't know, going back further is like what, I can't remember who said it, but that just love and sending it there in intention. And then of course, doing your best to break family patterns. That can be, hopefully, I mean, if you can spot it, if you can spot the pattern, I think that can be hugely freeing. You can say, well, I don't have to repeat that, you know.
And it goes a bit for everything. I think we've been, we grew up in a certain culture. We take on for granted what we've been given in that culture. And then at one point we start to question, for example, did I choose to be Catholic, or did I choose, you know, and all kinds of things like this. Why did I don't know, why did people before used to wear black at 50, or I don't know what, you know, and you start looking at all these things. Why? I think the importance of a culture is very marked. You notice it a lot as you grow up and you start looking at yourself. If you start noticing that a lot of the ideas that you hold are not being necessarily yours, but have been given with your baby milk or so. And then it's important to try to see what you want to make out of it, what you want to keep, what you can really make yours, and what you can dispose because it's not really who you are. And I think that because I lived in lots of different culture in different countries, then I've kind of got used to looking at things with different eyes. And I'm still, of course, working on this. Being of a crone age now, I do have to do a little bit of clearing up. But it's a nice process to be able to own who you are.
I think I do this in my teaching, is around always question your values, because I work in a multicultural situation, and often there's things about how do you say no, assumptions made about you, how do you become the best person of you are, how do you stand up for yourself? Well, we can't in our culture doesn't allow us to do this and this, and how people can often be tied by the cultural norms in which they grew up. And I say you will always challenge your culture, the values you've been given. It's not challenge them and then throw them away. It's challenge them, question them, and just like you say, evaluate them. Yeah. How useful is this value to me right now? Take it on and own it. Not, well, my parents would kill me if I didn't do this, or this has always been the value of my culture, so I have to do it. I don't like it, but I have to follow the rules. It's no. You have to be an adult and take responsibility for owning your own values and living by them. Yeah. And I think when you are clear about what you value in life and you take ownership of the values, so you may be delighted to own the values that your parents handed you. Brilliant, but it's now yours. Then you walk, I think, a path with integrity and taking personal responsibility for yourself, which is what Druidry is about.
Yeah.
You know, and then looking at everything through an ethical lens or through a lens of responsibility, rather than saying, well, this is what my family have always done, or this is what my culture does, or this is what happens in my country. It's like, no. Take responsibility and like somebody says, take what resonates and leave the rest. If it's useful for you, use it. Do not throw it away. But if it's not serving you, and I don't mean that in an individualistic way, but if it's not serving you, your relationships or humanity, then drop it.
Yeah.
I'm speeching. I'm off on one. Forgive me for that. I'm just I'm on a roll. And somebody says, yes, from Tara, I needed to hear everything you ladies have talked about today. Great.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes. So you mentioned you're a late bloomer. So am I. So I always feel like, God, I kind of woke up so late in life. And I couldn't have been any other way. But do you have any regrets?
Yeah, a bit to be a late bloomer. I've been looking back at the person I was when I was young, 16, 17, 18,
mm-hmm.
and what I liked at that time and what I've made out of that. And then I find out that there's a lot of it that I kind of left on the side, which I'm now picking up again, wondering why the heck, or whatever you want to say it politely, but forcefully, why I left that on the side for so long. So that's maybe a regret, that I didn't exploit what was important to me maybe enough. Although I understand that life gets in the way and you do all those things, and that's why it happened that way. But yes, and another regret, which is a present one, is that I cannot get the discipline to get as much down as I would like to do. When in fact we are in confinement after confinement. I have all the time in the world, and I still have a tendency to float a bit here and not do enough. So yes, I regret to not be more.
I think it just, Jane says, love our late bloomer club. And what did Gail and Yoka say? Yes, I'm part of that club. And somebody else, so much of us are really, I think we're going to have an invasion of late bloomers. I think it's wonderful. The interesting thing, the Cedar Creel, it couldn't have been any other way. It's important words for us late bloomers. I think, Alka, there's loads of them here, lots of late bloomers. We are not alone, Dany.
Oh, that's good. It's a comfort to hear, yes.
Because I think I spent a lot of my life, part of me is sleep. There was another part away, but I needed to comply and conform just because I was so scared, just to have some kind of ease in my life. And in a sense, I sold out. But if I was to do it again, I don't think I would do anything differently. In some way, because it came at the right time in many, many ways. I look at my daughter and how self-assured she is and so self-confident, and she'd argue a hole through a wall. Which drives me cuckoo at times. And then it's like, God, she can stand her ground. I'd never have done that. I would have just back down, sell myself out. You sell out to myself all the time. And she doesn't do that. And she has a great logic of arguing. And I think I really, really admire that. But maybe what I've gone through has allowed her to be who she is. I don't know. Yeah. So
And maybe it allow you to be who you are. You know, maybe that was the process.
And you can say that for yourself too. And
Yeah.
compared to you know, this thing about, you know, you've all this time and you should be. I was working with a group of artists today online around mental health during pandemic and how we manage it, and it came up around, you know, get off your own case and stop hounding yourself about all the things you should be doing because you've got all this time. A lot of the time is, I used to be a procrastinator. I still am a bit of it, but I used to give myself a hard time, and I discovered, no, procrastination isn't what I'm doing. I'm incubating.
Well, then incubating.
That's what I'm about. It was just some things happen and they go round and round and play in my mind. So I'm not sitting around just wasting time. There's stuff, the seeds are in the ground, they're in the dark, they're in the silence, they're in the stillness, they're in the frost. Nothing appears to be moving, all to be dead. And guess what? For the right conditions to emerge. And yes, Amanda Wolf, Harry, you talk about the seeds waiting to grow and timing, and that's exactly it.
Well, I have to say, can I say something?
Yes.
About timing. For years, I felt guilty about the OBOD group because
Yeah.
I got into the OBOD group and I was absolutely dying to go to the OBOD group because I was looking for my shamanistic
Yes.
experience, and I couldn't find the OBOD in me. And then I did the first translation that I did for Philip from his book, and that was really fantastic, and I'm really grateful to him and gave me the chance. And I thought, well, this must be my bard gift. I mean, it's the word I'm translating. And as old as I am, and I'm not gonna say it, but we know. In September, I finally connected to some things that I would consider very bardic, and I started to play the piano.
Ooh.
Yes, and I'm absolutely boiled over by what it's bringing to me. It's totally fantastic. So I to the gods and all of the OBOD, I have found the God now. That's it.
But you see, again, I think it was Amanda said, it's about timing. I took 7 years on the bardic grade. I think people will have heard this before. I struggled. I'm not a bard. Howard was the bard. He was spitting out poetry while he's waiting for the bread to rise. He could be writing it all the time. He didn't need to be locked away in a room. And I thought, I can't. I sent in my bardic review and I started telling stories because I, like you, I'd done shamanic training, my Reiki, my herbs. I wanted to get into the ovate and just do all of that. That's when I became a bard, and I took up the harp during the ovate. That somehow I needed to go through the bardic grade. And then something happened. So it's like, you know, Pat there talking about brewing or fermenting or stuff in the cauldron.
Yeah.
Just waiting. So maybe we're like, how long does brandy stay in a barrel?
I don't know.
I know what whiskey does. It can stay 50 years. So some of us have to stay longer in the barrel than others. And so see, Anya Neal says, my seeds must be planted very deep a lot of the time. But I think they may need to be that, you know. So we all have our own time. We all have our own time. So I'm afraid of the bardic grade. I wish there was an option to go directly to ovate. I feel I will struggle. Gabriella, stick with it. I was exactly like you. That's where you need to be. And no need to be afraid of it. But if that's where your challenge is, stay there. And I'll tell you, you will get through it because it's not an exam. It is not a trial of ordeal. It is a path where you're gentle with yourself and you just wait and see what comes. And you have no rush. You don't have to do it in a year. You just get your course, you know, in a calendar year. Like I said, I took 7 years. And I know other wonderful members of OBOD who have taken years, 15, 20 years. So what? It's your journey. So I see Mark Gibbons has just joined, I think. Well done, welcome. I'm not in a rush and I'll take it in my own time. Absolutely, because that's what, and then Gretchen, oh, thank the gods, it doesn't have to come immediately. Phew. Of course, because otherwise we'd all be under fierce pressure. I mean, some people are really gifted and they have the confidence. And somebody says, my mentor recently wrote that all is unfolding as it should. That's exactly what it is. So, yeah. So that's all we can say. Erica Lauren, Druid and shamanism has been tugging at me. I resonate very much, feel like at home even at this moment. I just don't know the way. Suppose that's why I'm here right now. Welcome, Erica. You know, why do you tune into something like this? Sometimes it just happens at the right time and you hear somebody says the right thing and you go, that's it. This is the place for me. Like when I read Cassandra Eason's book, she mentioned OBOD on the back of the book, and that was my window into Druidry and OBOD, and these things happen, I suppose, in a synchronous way. So,
if I can say something about OBOD,
sure.
I really want to make a point because I've been on what you call an edge druid or a solitary druid because I lived in the boonies, also in the Netherlands, and without the corresponding course, I would never have been able to get into Druidism. And I know that there are some people who, especially in France, where Druidism is much more a clan thing as opposed to a big group thing. Some people have been wondering if the OBOD way is the right way, because it's not passed from person to person, but via the correspondence booklets and I think that it's an absolute fantastic thing that OBOD has provided thousands and thousands of people like me who were isolated, who then had access to that knowledge, and through it also access to meeting people if we can go to camps or choose to or can, or and nowadays for people who can't even go to camp, maybe they will be online watching you or Philip or the online ritual that we did, which was so fantastic. I mean, this is what the OBOD does, and the courses have been translated in so many languages, so people all over the world can join together using the same prayers, whether they are in one language or the other. I mean, that is the strength of the OBOD, I feel.
I agree. So I wasn't too sure I heard you correctly. You were saying that for some in France is that it's like Druidry should be something that's inherited.
For some of the people that I've met, yes, they object to the idea of knowledge being passed or ritual being passed through booklets.
Yeah,
I've really told them that it's not in the booklet. What's in the booklets is a framework. They are proposal, they are suggestion. You do the work, and it's through your own experience that you make the knowledge yours. So I much rather work that way, work my own pace, my own way, rather than have somebody tell me what to do, what to think, and So
I see Pat has put God into OBOD, but that's okay. OBOD Druidry is passed by the correspondence course to begin with, also hugely from person to person. Every Druid I meet is a teacher, or sometimes a bad influence. I don't know who she's talking about there. But what for me was the course provided me the scaffolding.
Yeah, the framework.
To build my own Druidic practice. So no dogma, no stone buildings where everything is cast in stone. And I think Druidry comes from an oral tradition. nothing was written down. We had no idea how our ancestors practiced Druidry. There's also, you have the Roman accounts and you have the accounts by the Irish monks, and also you can learn a lot from it, from the Irish language. But Druidry now is a living, organic spiritual path. So yes, we have a correspondence course to make it accessible. So when Nuan asked Philip, after he had passed over, please, will you collect all my writings and create a course by distance? And now, you know, with the technology, so we moved from written pieces of paper to cassette tapes to CDs, and now we're going to move with the technology. That it's for the times we live in. I mean, if you'd asked me a year ago, would we ever have our ceremonies online? I'd have said no. It's inappropriate. It's not going to work. You can't do that. And of course it works, because anyone who's been at online ceremonies, that they do work. Not a substitute for a physical thing, but they do, because if we can work on the inner plane, we can work online.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really, really important to like somebody says, Amanda, I'm so grateful for that move. I wouldn't have been able to join otherwise. I think that, I think she's talking about the technology there, but that why do we have Druids members all over the world is because whatever it is, it's offering something. It's resonating with people for these times. And for others, maybe say, well, you know, you have to be a Druid, handed on a hereditary Druid. Fine, if that's where you are, if that's you know, horses for courses. But I don't think we need that. And because remember, for me, human lineage are highly flawed. The landscape, I get my Druidry from the landscape. And people often say, oh, because in Ireland, but that's English, isn't it? And just dismiss it. It's not real, or it's blah, 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 whatever. And I kind of go, no, it hasn't. It's been really, really important to me. And I hope to add stuff to it as well, you know, from the Irish context. But I get my stuff from the landscape. That's what teaches me.
Mm. And of course,
I don't know, like my grandfather, though I discovered my grandmother's name is Fahy, and that comes from Foy, which is the Irish word for shaman, or ovate, or diviner seer. So I could claim that would be really, really pushing it. But you know, I don't have a lineage of Druids in my family that I'm aware of. If they were so secretive, they kept it hidden. Donegal O'Dear, I get my Druidry from the landscape also. I think that's what it is. And then Maka Smith, I love OBOD's non-dogmatic approach. I think that works. And that's what has worked for me. And I'm hoping it continues to work for other people. Yeah. So.
And also the fact that Druidism is very alive nowadays.
Yes.
To me, it's really something from now. And something alive and happy, I want to say. I'm not the kind of Druid that will always have my nose in the books, or will always have to make references to writers or so. I get fed by nature, and then by meeting people. And I think it's so fabulous when the few times I've been to this retreat or workshop, and I meet these people from different culture and different nationalities. And we don't even have to really talk to each other much to be connected, because we all come from that big tribe. In fact, we have that in common, and I think that's really, really fabulous. And it's even funny because when we do the Druid grade, or whatever grade we're on, we don't discuss that with other people. We don't say, I mean, la son plan and in there I've seen that. We keep this a personal thing. But we do have the rituals. This is a common bond, the ritual and what they mean in different languages. And that's enough to unite us, and the rest is personal.
Yes. I remember I went to the very first ovate gorset, and I hadn't been to a gathering, so I didn't know many people. And I was waiting. I thought they're going to ask me now. Where was I? Maybe I was at course 30 or something. Shit! If they're going to start saying, okay, now how did you find course 40 or something? I'm going, oh God, I haven't gone that far. There was no mention of it, and I mean, that's not. Nobody ever says, "And how far are you on now in your teaching?"
Yeah.
You don't. Nor it's certainly in my experience of OBOD, nobody has ever asked me when I started going to the gatherings, "So what grade are you in?" Just doesn't happen. Sorry, in these islands anyway, nobody asks, and so it's not important. It's that we are Druids, and we are Druids regardless of the grade we're in, because we're members. We're a member of a Druidic order,
Yeah.
and it's like it's a mystery. It's a mystery school, and nobody asks how far you are. And like Carly Kennedy, the personal part is what appeals to me. Of course, that's exactly it. So yeah. So I asked you about your regrets. What are you most proud of, or what has been your greatest achievement?
Well, I think as a mother, I'm gonna have to say my kids, but that's kind of obvious. So, and I say that because I think it's a miracle. I've just seen my grandson, who is a bit over 1 month old, and I'm looking at this little boy, and I'm thinking, his father is my son, and I'm gonna be their ancestors, and yeah, it's really nice. But it's not to say that it's because it's my son or my grandson. I think the miracle of life altogether, and it can be animals, or it can even be plants, or the fact that something is born and grow. I find that really. But okay, my biggest achievement other than that, I would say definitely translating that book. That gave me. I was so naive when I took on the job. I was really naive. I thought, oh, I can do it because it's a subject I love, and I speak the language and I understand it, and blah blah blah. It was a lot of work, and I was.
So what book is this? You need to tell people what book it was.
It was a book from Philip Dritcraft. The magic of weekend Druidism, and I just now finish lesson in magic. Some people have done the webinar and the workshop, and I did, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm really pleased to have finished this one, which was a small one. But it was just fabulous to be able to get into the book. It's not mine because I didn't write it, but I like the content, and it becomes mine when I start playing with the words. And it takes over hours of work. It takes hours of work. Which is great. It's a journey on its own, and this really brought me a lot of satisfaction and pleasure, and so that I think would be, at first thought, one of my biggest achievements. Yes.
Wonderful. What has been the most reckless thing you've ever done?
I jumped off the window when I was 20 to escape from the house because my parents didn't want me to do something, and I wanted to. So I jumped, and I had to walk, take a bus, take a train, take a boat to go where I was going, and made the last boat. And that was a bit of rebellion there. I don't think I'm a really reckless person. I think I do a lot of thinking before I act. Maybe too much.
What is the biggest challenge you've had that you've overcome?
I think the biggest challenge was to be after my divorce, I was left alone with two small boys in a country which wasn't mine. I didn't speak the language well. I didn't have any family, and I have barely any friends. So that was really a challenge. And at the same time, it was probably what made me grow the most. So.
What made you stay in Holland?
I came there with my soon-to-be ex-husband afterwards. And then when he left actually for the Philippines, so it was not gonna be a father at hands, close at hand. And I decided my kids had just started to get, they were, I don't know, 7 and 8, 6 and 7. And I decided that they were just putting a bit of roots in Holland. And if I decided to go back to France, I wouldn't know exactly where to go, and I would have to uproot them. And I decided to stay in Holland until they were 18, 20, and then I would leave because it would be okay. Of course, didn't work out that way at all.
No.
One of them stayed with me until he was 27, so I couldn't leave it. I wouldn't have left anyway. So, yes.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. What, given the way we're living at the moment in this modern world, what concerns do you have about the modern world?
I think the way we're intolerant.
Yeah.
The way we're intolerant. I think that we fear what we don't know. And I work many years in Holland with people who are looking to get political asylum.
Yes, yeah.
So I met a lot of people who had been in really bad situation. And a lot of people are afraid by what they don't know. They were afraid of us sometimes.
Yeah.
And we had a tendency sometimes to have preconceived idea about people based on the way they look or the way they act or their beliefs that are unknown to us. And I think nowadays with all the problem we have, we're starting to close again ourselves a bit. Every country is starting to look more for itself, and we're starting to look at others in a different way. We're starting to be afraid again, a bit of each other. So to me, that's my biggest concern, that we were already a bit intolerant of what we didn't know, but I think we're going to get this way maybe a bit more with all that's happening.
Yeah, I think when we're in a place of fear, we can do a lot of damage, and that's the sad part. What would you say gives you hope, or do you have any hope about the situation, or do you think that we're?
Yeah, I have hope. I always have hope.
And what is it that gives you hope?
It's maybe a cliche to say young people give me hope, but they do. They do. I think that we're often stuck in our ways as older people.
Never.
And so I think, and we become somehow maybe a bit more mindful of what we have, more protective of what we have, and we want a bit of peace. At least I know I want peace in my life. I don't really want to get involved into all the big problem of the world. But I'm hoping that that the new generation will. They are already, I think, more aware of all the problems that we were. It's a question of time too. They don't have much of a choice, and they're also more connected than we were.
If we could achieve and maintain that childlike curiosity about others rather than fear them, we could go much further in bettering relationships between peoples. I think, Cara, that's really, really important to recognize. There's far more that connects us than divides us, and I think that childlike curiosity, that respectful curiosity about people and others, I think is a really, really important thing. And it's a bit like, when you were talking about understanding, standing in the footsteps of your mother. I mean, that's not the language you used, but when you understood her perspective, then you could go, okay, so you're not stuck into the mother-daughter relationship.
Right.
that you see. And it's the same with people who asylum seekers, or people who've come from traumatic situations and are looking for some kind of sanctuary. And when you stand in their shoes and look at it from their perspective,
Yes.
there's no need to fear. And I think that's and then Amanda says we need to feel safe to be curious. That's true, but there seems to be, if you're a naturally curious person, that can actually add to your safety, because then you have a sense of wonder. And when you have a sense of wonder and curiosity, you then take you take risks, you take a step outside the look.
You go
Sorry?
investigate. You try to know more, and I think it's very important. For curiosity is, for me, practically the best quality, because it pushes you out of yourself and out of your surrounding to learn more and to find out about things and question them and get enthusiastic about it. And yeah, that's how we get to know more people, more things, even ourselves.
And then Amanda says we need to, what is it? You need to be brave enough. Curiosity requires bravery. The interesting thing is, when we say people have been brave because they've dealt bravely with a really, really terrifying, difficult situation, you say that was a really brave thing. You stood up for these people, or you stood up for your rights or your beliefs or whatever it is. And it's like, people will eventually say, but I was scared shitless. I didn't feel brave at all. I was petrified, I was terrified. But that's what makes you brave. If you weren't fearful, then you weren't brave, because it wasn't called for. It's that fear, and then you stand up in the middle of your fear. That's what's brave. Yeah. So it's actually that, from Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's like, I'm terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. And I know you talked about being nervous coming on here. And all of my guests have said, oh no, I can't do it. And I said, just do it. And it's like, don't let fear ever get in the way. Because
that's not what you said. You said to me, you're French. What can you be afraid of, for God's sake?
But it's that I'm that curious little kitten in life, indeed. So it's around being able to want to. I mean, you watch children, if they have you need a secure base. So if you have a secure base, obviously, at home, then you watch children. They run off and then they come back to their mother, and then they run off again and they come back. And it's always taking those little steps out. I think is really, really important. So yes. And it's interesting you said, that you're talking about the younger generation giving you hope, and that, you now want a little bit of peace. You described yourself as a crone, and that is your right. That is your place as a crone to say, now I want a bit of peace. I remember a good teacher I had, and she was talking about the value of being a crone, or the value of each age group within a community. That like, why do teens sleep all day and they're up all night? If you go back, she was saying, back to the past, they would have been up all night and they'd have been keeping watch. While the older people, the crones like us, would be in bed. Then we get up early and we're stoking the fire in the morning and getting the breakfast ready while they're sleeping it off. And that each age group has a different life concern that actually is adaptive to maintain the integrity of the community. So for older people is to be there maybe as elders or supporters of givers of advice, rather than being out there with your placard. That's where the young people come in.
Yes.
I'm letting you off the hook. You can mind your fireplace and mind your evening glass of wine. You don't have to do it. That's what the younger generation's for. Is yeah. So, are you just? And it may be too late to ask you this question. Too late in your life, because you are so old. Is when and why would you fight back?
Oh, I listened to Roland last week, and Roland was really talking about being a pacifist.
Yes.
And I asked myself that question. I asked, if Eimear asked me if I'm a pacifist, what am I going to tell? And then I think, well, I'm gonna have to tell the truth, and the truth is, I am a pacifist with exceptions.
Yes.
And the exception is, for example, I would really like to believe that if I was in the streets and a child was being beaten up, or of a woman was being abused, I mean, somebody who cannot necessarily defend themselves, that I would have the guts to get involved. Although I'm not the biggest woman in the world or whatever, but I mean, I can be fierce, I'm sure. Then I would get involved, because I think that words are very important, and I know how to use them. I know how to fight with words, but or to defend myself with words. But I do believe that sometime, if it was necessary, I would get physically involved, I think. And if I was attacked, I would hope that I can fight back.
That's a really interesting, because naturally I'm feisty. I'm feisty with words, but certainly because of my size, like you, tiny. Well, tiny from top to bottom, and I would never hit somebody. I'd never initiate any kind of physical violence, and that's pure self-preservation, because everybody's bigger than me, and they would hammer me. That would be a really stupid move. But it was actually a year ago. I did a self-defense class with some ninja warriors and learned how to defend myself. And I was really struck. And this is how to play dirty. So if somebody's coming to attack you and they're going to rape you or kill you, this isn't about, because I teach assertiveness. No, let's sit down and negotiate here. There's no time for that. How to become a cat in someone's arms. That means wriggle and scratch and scrape and bite and do what you have to do. And luckily I had a big ninja to train with. There were 2 other women with me. And I thought, if I had to pair with them, I wouldn't have done anything, because I'm not hitting her. I couldn't. Oh my God, I couldn't do any of this. But I had this big guy. I was given the biggest guy. And it was really, really, I made him yell. And he went, and he winced. But it was really, really empowering. And I thought, okay, I now know that if I was attacked, I don't have to freeze with fear. Now, having said that, that may happen. But I know I don't have to, that if somebody grabs you by the arms, I can twist and get out. That it's impossible for someone to hold you by the wrist. No matter how strong they are, you can wriggle out. And I found that really, really empowering. Although I never, ever, ever want to be involved in a physical fight. But knowing that I could, if I had to, I find empowering to have the skill, but not needing to do it. And I think that's I found that really, 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 really helpful. So,
me too.
So I'm a conditional pacifist. Generally, I'm all for it. But if somebody was attacking my children, oh my God, I would defend them. So, and it's again the vulnerability. I tend to be pacifist online, social media. I find the fighting back, I find that difficult, because there's no winning. That you can.
You can't win online. No.
As somebody says here, I was attacked. This is interesting. I was attacked once walking with a friend who was smaller than me, and it was really something knowing that I had it in me to respond the way I did by shielding her. Well done, Gretchen. That is being able to stand up for yourself so that you don't live in fear, because when we were talking about if you're living in fear, then you become dangerous. I mean, like this notion of a cornered rat or an animal in fear can become dangerous. So to be able to have our own power, I think it's beautiful. Somebody says we crones lose the fear of acknowledging our wisdom. And I think so. There's something, I find being the crone quite liberating. So it's just lovely to reach an age where you say, do you know what? The rules no longer apply.
I like the way you say that. Do you know what?
I remember when I was 42, at the beginning of this century, And I met a woman who was 10 years older than me, an American woman from New York, incredibly wise woman who was really fit and much fitter than me. So she was 52 and I was 42. And she could sit in lotus, I can never do that, with a straight back and really supple. Now, I had an 18-month-old, so my daughter was 18 months at the time, so you kind of go, oh, okay, all right, you know, you're still post-baby, you can't have the perfect fitness. But, and I remember talking to her about it, and she was saying in the US at the time that, you know, people are getting older younger. So, you know, when you think of cosmetic surgery, there was a time you did it when you were in your 60s and then 50s and then in the 40s. And then she says even people going for knee replacements because there's a tweak, so that obsession with trying to stay, not be young, but look young.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, and it was really, really interesting. She said, we have a duty to remain young, not look young.
Yeah.
Because we have a responsibility to become elders. So she said, 50s and your 60s, you're just beginning to get in there. In your 70s and 80s, yeah. And then in your 80s and 90s, you are truly an elder. So almost like that, you have that responsibility to live for as long as you can, to have that wisdom to pass on. Now, not everybody gets the chance to live to be old. Like Howard was a very wise man, and he died at 69. You know, but I hope by the time I'm 95 that I will have some kind of wisdom to offer. But I just thought that was lovely because she said the world needs elders.
Oh, I believe that.
And then age comes wisdom. And I think having that energy of young people and you marry it with the wisdom or of the elders, I think you have a good match. You end up, instead of the generations fighting, you end up with actually generations talking to each other, because each one of us has something to offer. And I know when I was young, my parents were always saying, oh, you generation, the teenagers of today, they don't care. They're so self-centered. They're this, and this. And then 10 years later, another crowd are saying that. And then I find people who in their 30s complaining about teenagers being so self-centered. And I'm going, you sound like my parents did. We never did this. We never did that. Of course, everybody did. I know Aristotle, I came across a quotation where he was complaining about young people. I thought, oh, nothing changes. And then you get people who are that generation are really conservative. They're not. There are members of that generation who are conservative. There are members of that generation who are innovative, broad-minded. And then there are teenagers who are really, really conservative. And others are really, really broad-minded. So it's got to do with your temperament. But if we can all come and actually be able to share or really enjoy the enthusiasm and energy of younger people, and to enjoy the wisdom and of olders, it's wonderful. I feel like a crone. This is Amanda, through and through. I'm not yet 40, and I struggle with acting the way I'm supposed to be at 38. I hope you can come to terms with that, Amanda. It seems so many older people are denying their elderhood now. Suzanne, you know what? I remember having an argument with Howard years ago when he was coming to be 60. And I said, well, we're going to have a big, big celebration for you, and we're going to have an elder ceremony for you. And he says, no. Can't. Nobody listens to old people. Now, he was 14 years older than me, so I was a really young thing then. And Nikki Gollison, is there an official age when I can declare myself a grumpy old git? I love that. But he said, I can't, nobody. And I remember getting really frustrated with him. And I said, people really admire you. You have to stop blaming young people for not listening. Get up and stand up and speak. And I think that is older people denying their elderhood now. That he didn't listen to me because he wouldn't listen to my wisdom. However, when he was 65, he had gotten it. And we had a wonderful elder ceremony for him. And we had done our shamanic training together, and he was 62 and the youngest were 22. And although he wasn't a teacher, he was a fellow participant. But the younger people would come to me and say, I can't wait to hear what he's going to say this weekend. I said, do you realize there's a wisdom in you that people love? Now you have to take responsibility, stand up and make sure you're heard. So I think I agree with that for older people, it's not just about, okay, I noticed older people who complain about youngsters are not caring actually complain about not being able to connect with the younger ones, or actually complain about being, yeah, I think that sometimes can be hard, but I have found my experience of connecting with young people, I've been able to do it. I don't know. I have to brag here. I remember having some teenagers as clients, and they were talking with me, and they were complaining about their parents being so old-fashioned. And I said, well, how do you feel about working with me? Because I'm old. And they go, no, you're cool. And then I said, and how old are your parents? Oh, my mother's 38. And I went, so it's nothing to, I think it's
not a question of age.
No. No, I make you feel 18. This is Holly. She's 68. Well done. Great.
I think if you remain curious, or if you're curious by nature, and if you're enthusiastic, you engage with life, and I think that's more important than age. But of course, if you're older, you have already gotten a few experiences, bad and good, and maybe you handle things a bit different than the youngster do. But I feel sometimes when people say, "Oh, you are that age, you look younger, or you act younger," and I think, but I don't know what that means, because I've never been that age before, and I find it strange that we have these ideas, these set ideas about you should act like this, or you should, behave like that, or think different, or I don't know. I think it's great to carry on to be. I even think that I'm starting to be a better me now than I ever was.
I agree. I said, I'm saying you're a better person. I didn't know you. There's just a number of what's in your heart and soul and intentions that matter the most. I agree. I have an internal age. I'm 37 on the inside. But Olivia Robertson, one of the co-founders of the Fellowship of Isis and one of Philip's teachers, I first met her when she was 93. And she had that childlike energy, and she died at 96. And she broke her leg, and she was in hospital for months before she passed. But her mentally, she was fine. I think she had a stroke about 2 weeks before she passed. But I used to go and see her, and she still had that life and energy. And she was never an old person, like an old, grumpy, conservative, grumpy old gate. That's only for men, is it, Ricky? But you know that thing about, she always had that youth. And I think she'd had many, many experiences. And I think it's a sense of having had a sense of a lived life. I think if you've had a sense of an unlived life, or you've missed out on something, I think that you can carry maybe resentment or regrets or sadness. Whereas if you say, actually, I'm really happy with the life I've lived, or all the people I've loved, or, or even the mistakes I've made, that I lived a full life. And I think having and doing things that keep you young. Michael says, I feel like my career choice keeps me feeling young. I've been tattooing for 13 years professionally, and I feel like one of Peter Pan's lost boys every day at work. And it's Linda Joan, age more to do with attitude. I think if you can remain present, open, and spontaneous, it goes a long way to acting young. And I think so. That is, I think that's very, very important. Being able to live fully. You know what? We've gone over time. You've broken the record, Dany.
I've broken records. Yeah.
I always ask people what their favorite season is and what their favorite Wheel of the Year ceremony is. What's yours?
Season definitely spring. I used to be a summer, but I love spring because it's full of hope, and I'm so idealistic and romantic that every year I think, oh yes, this year's gonna be, it's gonna be so great, and everything's starting, and we're gonna have a great summer and a great this and that, and every year, I think the same. But really, to see the nature coming alive, it's fabulous after the winter. So definitely spring, and the best, the ritual, I think, is definitely Samhain. Because that's really the one ritual that I will do on my own and really, really enjoy. because that's a moment where I really celebrate my blood ancestors. And
Yes.
every year it becomes more and more. I get more pictures out. I seem to go backward and backward. I feel the connection. And I like it because I kind of make it last for 3 days.
Beautiful.
And there's that sense of every night you add something and you step back into that room and you picked up from yesterday. And it doesn't have to be long, but I really feel the special connection with Samhain. And otherwise it would have to be Beltane because it's full of love and joy and fire and passion. And so that would be my two favorite.
Wonderful. And for most people it's Samhain. I love all of them. And Samhain here lasts for a month because it means the month of November. So I have my ancestral photographs and it's there for the month of November, which I love. So I can share the month of Samhain with you, which is the month of November, if you want to do more than 3 days. Gabriella, we need to know if Dany is a magician. I don't know if you want to answer that question, or if you can answer it.
I'm a cautious magician. I really believe it works, and I did that workshop, the lesson in magic, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I can see that I got some of the results, really. And I translated the book just now, so I really got into it again. Yeah, I think I'm a magician, but I'm very, 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 very cautious because I think it works. So you have to be very, very precise. and I also think that I shouldn't really ask for, they are, let's say, more important things than what I should ask for, that I leave for other people. I'm pretty grateful about my life. I don't really have to ask for much, I think. So, but yes, I would like to think I'm a magician.
I think that's wonderful. Not having to ask for much, and then there's that adage: be careful what you ask for, you might get it.
Yeah.
And for me, sometimes that if I was thinking about, well, what is it I want? It's that I might limit myself by wanting that. So I like to think of whatever is for my highest good and greatest joy, which is a kind of a Reiki expression, but that rather than thinking, well, if I had this, I'd be really happy. And you kind of go, well, actually, that's really confining me.
I want more.
And then you should have put in for more. So I kind of leave it open, because rather than confine myself, because I've no idea where my life. I never thought I'd be here. And anyway, do you know what? We have to go. It's been absolutely wonderful having you as a guest, Dany. As like we said, we had no idea how this conversation was going to pan out, and it's just. I just love these chats, and I love the interaction with our audience, how people have just really engaged with some wonderful comments. It just blows me away. And if you told me a year ago that we would be having these conversations online, I would have said, no, it's not going to happen. You can't do this. And I'd never, ever go online, live streaming, taking such a risk.
Yes.
And that's why there's something around never limiting myself.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it. So you don't go away, but I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody else. So so you can say goodbye, and then I'll say goodbye.
Thank you to everybody for being here. I'm looking forward to read the comments and to see again maybe all the things that we've been talking about. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Eimear, for inviting me, and hi to all my friends.
Okay. So listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been particularly interactive tonight, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I will look at the comments, and so will Dany, and respond to them, and really appreciate that. This is just absolutely wonderful. What a wonderful community we can create by having these fireside chats. So I look forward to seeing you next week at the same time for a conversation with another mystery guest from the member of Bards, Oboids and Druids. So be well. We're in the middle of a serious lockdown. I think many, many countries are now there as well. So let's all be safe and look out for each other. Slán go fóill agus gura míle maithagah.